The forced training started almost immediately after that. You had no idea if Kylo had gotten his leader's permission to start training you or not, but it wasn't as if you were ever really going to ask. Kylo had made it clear up front that you were not going to receive your own lightsaber, and you were fine with that. You had only seen one lightsaber in your lifetime, and that was his. You had no idea if they were all as hard to handle, or if it was just that his had such a temper. Although you suspected it was the latter, you were in no hurry to find out. Besides, you had your staff, and that was the only weapon you really needed. You had bashed yourself in the knees enough times the first time you had started playing with it, and you could only imagine the harm you would inflict upon yourself if you were actually given a lightsaber. About 2 weeks later, you're sitting on his bed with him. You're sitting cross-legged about 2 feet apart, facing each other as you go through your usual training exercises. Just grab it, Kylo tells you. You close your eyes and try to focus, but nothing comes. I can't. You can, just focus. There's a hint of irritation in his voice, and his irritation quickly becomes frustration. I can't, you say firmly. You open your eyes and glare down at your staff that lies contracted between the two of you. He sighs and rubs at his temple in agitation. As if to prove a point, he holds up his right hand, and your staff immediately flies into it. He twirls it around in his fingers before he sets it back down on the bed between you. Show off, you murmur. It's your staff, he tells you. Yeah, I should be able to grab it easily because of my attachment to it, you tell him. Only I can't because I'm unfocused because you're distracted. I'm not distracted, Kylo says smoothly, but he immediately looks away under your intense gaze. At least now he knew what it felt like when everyone else gazed into that slit in his mask. You've been fighting with Hux again, you tell him. Have not, he replies. Have too, you snort. You forget, I'm picking up impressions all the time now. He sighs and rubs at his temple again, as if you're physically depleting his energy. I told you to keep the shield up. Shield has now replaced wall in your vocabulary because that's effectively what you had been able to do. Taro had made a wall in your head that was steadfast and immovable, but you had managed to create a shield that you could cower behind at certain instances, such as when Kylo was trying to painfully probe your mind. He hadn't forcibly tried to enter your mind at full strength ever since you moved in with him, and although he argued that he was, for training purposes, you could get into his head. You knew he wasn't trying as hard as he could have. You knew he didn't want to really hurt you, if he could help it. Which is why it was curious that he had never put up a shield around you. You could get into his head easily enough, and although you weren't really powerful enough to pick up specific thoughts, the force bond between you made it extremely easy to pick up impressions, moods, and feelings. It had been stronger ever since the night when you had both fucked inside each other's heads. You hadn't done that since. It was too emotionally intense and physically draining, but the force bond had been stronger from that point forward to the point that there was almost an invisible link tying you to him at all times. At first you had almost been afraid that he was going to resent you for being able to discern his moods with such an uncanny preciseness, but you had been unconsciously doing that since you had first met him. You supposed, one way or another, that your link to him had always been leading you slowly, but inevitably, in this direction. Even still, you assumed Kylo never kept a shield up around you because it kept him grounded. You could tell when he was distracted or annoyed with Hux, when he wasn't in the room, because you would feel a twitch in the back of your brain, or a jerk in your leg, or a spasm in the muscles in your arms. It was like your body physically responded in small ways to his changes in moods. It was at those times that you did your best to stop what you were doing and center yourself, trying to meditate, trying to flood him with positive energy, or at least enough of a sense of calm to keep him grounded. You had no way to know if it worked or not, but judging by the way he seemed to kiss you and touch you when he got home after those days, you could tell that it had at least some sort of an effect on him. Kylo snaps his fingers in front of you, and you blink, shaking your head to clear it. I want to help, you tell him. I want to help keep you grounded and focused, if I can. He just sighs and shakes his head. Even if he secretly liked it, it was not something he would ever admit to. Try it again. You close your eyes and concentrate on the staff in front of you. For a moment, you don't think it's working, but suddenly you can feel the brush of the staff against your leg. You got excited for a moment, thinking that you were at least moving it a little bit, but when you open your eyes, you see Kylo leaning forward, pushing it towards you with one hand. He stops immediately, having the decency to flush and avert your eyes. Ass, you huff, picking up the staff and placing it back in the space between you. Yeah, you thought if I thought it was working, then I'd be able to do it. You snap. Please, have some faith in me. Have faith in the Force, he reminds you, and you bite your lip for a moment before you close your eyes again. Okay, Force, well, if you're real, then. The staff jumps into your palm almost instantly, and your eyes flick open. You did that, you yell at him. You did that. I didn't, he says, but you lean forward and swat at the side of his arm anyway. You're about to reach forward and hit him again when he catches your wrist in one large hand. He pushes you down onto the bed, immediately moving his chest over yours as he traps you beneath him. You did that, you insist, but you tilt your head up to plant a firm kiss on his lips anyway. He kisses you back slowly, softly, rubbing his nose against yours before he pulls away, pulling you into a seated position. You did that, he repeats. Now let's see you do it again. I'm distracted, you tell him, feeling heat creeping into your cheeks. Well, let's see you do this then, he tells you, and maybe I can help with that. You bite your lip as you grin up at him, making no effort to conceal your blush. Okay, fair enough. That's enough incentive for me. You adjust the staff in front of you and then hold out your hand to make sure you're actually the one who is doing this. You hold your hand above the staff, fingers outstretched, stretching the skin on your palm taut. You start to feel a slight tingling sensation in the center of your palm that radiates outwards as you try to pull upwards with your hand, then your mind, trying to mimic the sensation in your head of what it actually feels like to have the staff physically in your hand. It flies up suddenly, and you just manage to close your fingers around it as it strikes your palm. I did it, you say excitedly as you look up, your thirst for him momentarily forgotten. I really did it. He pushes his lips together in a tight-lipped smile as he raises his eyebrows, watching you closely. You turn the staff over in your hands, as if in awe of yourself. I really did it. So let's see, I can move things with the Force now. I can get into your head. I can keep you out of my head, at least a little bit. You look up at him. Now I just need to learn how to do that Force choke thing that you do. For a moment, Kylo looks concerned, but he recovers himself quickly as he rolls his eyes. That is something that you will be unable to do. Why, you ask, dropping the staff and crossing your arms over your chest. Because I'm not powerful enough? Because that's a dark side ability, he tells you, and you are not attuned to the dark side of the Force. I'm not? You ask blankly, raising an eyebrow. I mean, I'm here, aren't I, with the First Order? The First Order has nothing to do with the Force, Kylo explains. Dark side users draw their abilities from dark emotions like fear, hatred, and anger. Light side users draw their power from... Kylo makes an attempt to shrug, but his shoulders involuntarily shudder, as if the very thought of it makes him sick. I don't know, calmness. It's used more for knowledge, for defense. Okay, I don't know where you've been, but I'm pretty sure my powers are coming from the dark side, you insist. I mean, as much as I don't want to recall how angry I was a few weeks ago, I was pretty angry, and I drew a lot of power from focusing on my anger. And the only time I was ever able to use the Force push was when I was really angry at you for choking Ladson. That's the only time I was able to use it. That's because you were feeding off of my energy, Kylo tells you, but you're still not too sure. Think about right now. You were able to summon the staff into your hand, which requires a significant amount of power and control. Were you angry now? No, you sulk. It wasn't that you wanted to be on the dark side, per se, but you just wanted to know how to defend yourself, and perhaps learning how to Force choke someone was a part of that. You knew Phasma would probably disagree, but hadn't Ladson once told you that the best defense was a good offense? I mean, does it have to be that black and white? Dark side and light side? Can't I be somewhere in the middle? Can't I just be like Gray? Kylo just shakes his head, not answering your question as he looks away from you. You can tell there's a story here, and you want to ask what it is, but you know it might just cause an argument, and things had been going so good between you two lately that you didn't even want to bother. His past didn't matter to you. All that mattered was how he treated you now. I'm just gonna ask, you say after a moment, is there a whole, school of philosophy to this whole dark side, light side thing? Do they each have their own separate schools of thought? More than you know, he replies curtly. And people who are on the light side, you venture. If someone studies the light side of the Force, they're called a Jedi, right? Kylo purses his lips together but raises an eyebrow, still not looking at you. B told us that a Force-sensitive trooper escaped to the Resistance, and they were training him as a Jedi. The corner of Kylo's lip twitches, and you decide not to press your line of inquiry any further. Sorry, forget I asked. These are not things you need to concern yourself with, Kylo says simply. For a moment he looks way too calm, and that's when you realize that you've been inadvertently holding up a shield between yourself and him, preventing any negative emotions from slipping through. You lower it slowly, and it's like lifting a heavy canvas curtain, allowing all sorts of new emotions to leak through. The first one you feel is a pure and unrefined hatred for someone you don't even know, followed by Kylo's rage, which has by now become all too familiar to you, which is followed by... Kylo can sense that the connection between you has opened up to full strength again as he leans over and pushes your shoulders down onto the bed, moving his body over yours as he presses his lips into the hollow where your neck meets your jawline. While he's distracted, you take a minute and position your right hand in the air, just above him. Force choke, force choke, force choke. But you're not angry, and nothing happens, so you contentedly slip your hands into Kylo's dark locks as you kiss him back. You gently slide your hands to either side of his head, palms against his temples, and he stiffens, but only for a moment. What are you doing? Nothing, you reply simply as you continue to kiss him, picking up the intensity by arching your back against the bed and pushing your chest against his. He growls, low in his throat, and his hand immediately comes to your waist, fingertips brushing against your warm skin just underneath the hem of your shirt. You close your eyes and focus, knowing that the times when you were intimate together was one of the easiest times to get into his head. You suspect he knows that as well, as he pulls away slightly, his lips hovering just above yours. What'd you want to see? I don't know. You try to shrug, but you can't really with the way he's holding you. Anything. He looks unsure now, and you absolutely hate that look. You love it when he looks focused and confident and in control of himself. You're strong enough to keep me from seeing anything you don't want me to see. Fair enough, he relents, but his hot breath against your face is intoxicating, and you kiss him for a little while longer, in absolutely no hurry to break the distance between you. I know, you tell him, eventually pulling away slightly. Let me see the time you rescued Sadie. His body immediately tenses. No, I don't think that's a good idea. Why not? You tilt your head to the side so you can appraise him better. I mean, you saved her. It's your big defining heroic moment for me. I'm not a hero, Kylo snaps, and you take this moment while he's distracted to roll your hips to the side and throw your legs over his, straddling him on the bed so that he's pinned beneath you. Hands on either side of his head, you try to focus, keeping his shoulders pinned with your elbows so he can't get easy access to your thoughts. He probably could get in without touching you, but it was just so much easier that way. It was like once you pressed your fingers against someone's temple, their mind became like a filing cabinet full of memories that you could pick up and choose from, as simple as flipping pages through a magazine. Sadie, you say firmly, closing your eyes, and the name immediately stirs a memory within him. It's emotionally charged, so it comes to the forefront of his mind immediately, but he puts up a shield there, preventing you from getting any closer. Try as you might, I'm getting in, you tell him. You had tried to get around Kylo's shields before while just practicing, but this didn't feel like practice all of a sudden. It felt like Kylo had some sort of memory concealed that he didn't want you to see, and it had to do with Sadie. Latson's distrust of him immediately comes to your mind, and for a moment you're worried that your defining moment of love for him was nothing more than you being manipulated yet again. If he really had saved Sadie, why didn't he want you to see it? You close your eyes. Sadie was your friend, your best friend, your sister, and although the last few times you had seen her you had sparred with bitter, resentful words, it didn't change how you felt about her. She was yours to protect, and you were going to do everything in your power to make sure she got off this base safely. Right now, the only thing you could do was confirm that she was safe was by getting in Kylo's head. Slowly, you begin to overwhelm him. Suddenly, it's as if you're on the other side of the wall, pounding at the bricks that he's trying to keep in place. Let them all come down, you think to yourself, and suddenly you push hard, with your fingertips, with your mind, not pulsing like Kylo so frequently did, but throwing yourself at him in one complete burst of energy. You feel him slip backwards, and at first you think you've actually physically knocked him backwards, but he's lying on his back on the bed, and there's nowhere else for him to go. That's when you realize that the shield is down and he's vulnerable, exposed. Emotions are the first things that drip through your senses before you can even see anything. First, you feel pity, then an awkward form of discomfort that isn't quite like anything you've ever felt before. Then a hint of sadness, then anger, rage, Kylo's rage, and all of its unhinged fury, and you can feel his hands on the hilt of his lightsaber, although you can't see anything. You focus harder, trying to get in, trying to see what Kylo is trying to keep from you. You feel the pull of the muscles in his arms as he swings his lightsaber out as if it was your own, and for a moment you see it, the red flash of the blade, as Sadie flinches and looks away. You're about to pull away when you hear it, so faint as if it's coming from the end of a long tunnel, but you can recognize Kylo's angry shouting when you hear it. You're right. I am a dark, twisted, loathsome person. She has no idea what I am, and she's never going to know. It doesn't take you more than a second to realize that he's talking about you, and you quickly drop your hands. Kylo, what's going on? You ask quietly. There's an edge to your voice that you don't think he's ever heard from you before, as his dark eyes are large and sincere as they look up at you. He looks almost scared in this position, vulnerable, and it's the first time you think you've seen him like this. You put a hand on his chest to help you focus, and it's not just the rapid drum of his heartbeat underneath your fingertips that concerns you. You can also feel the emotions coursing through you, and for a moment, all you feel is fear, the kind that makes the narrow hairs on your arms stand on end as it cloaks your palms with sweat. You reach down and kiss him hard, hands pressed against the side of his face to try to dispel this new emotion that's coursing through you, because his fear has suddenly become your own, and while he's scared that you're going to leave him, suddenly you're just as scared that he's going to leave you. Both of his large hands wrap around your back, pressing you to him, and for a moment you want nothing more than to lose yourself in him, to be comforted by him, but you can't allow that to happen, not right now, not when you don't know what is going on. Show me, you say softly, sitting up again. What did you do, Kylo? Kylo sulks, turning his head to the side so he doesn't have to look at you. I didn't want you to see that, he says after a moment. I got angry. Show me. Your hands find their way to his temple and you close your eyes, letting the memory start almost immediately. This time, Kylo makes no attempt to hold you back as you watch the scene play out in front of you. You're right. You can hear the rage in Kylo's voice, and it scares you through the memory. He holds his blade out in front of him, gesturing with it menacingly. You're right. I am a dark, loathsome, twisted person. She has no idea what I am, and she's never going to know. She's never going to know how I killed you, how I disposed of your body in a trash heap somewhere. No one will know, and no one will care. All I have to do is tell her that I helped you escape, and she is so blinded by her feelings for me that she'll believe whatever I tell her. She'll think I'm a hero, and she'll never know that I murdered her sister in cold blood. Can you live with that? Sadie had asked. Her voice had stayed surprisingly level, but you could still sense her fear. You've killed scores of people, I'm sure, but can you continue to go to bed and fuck her every night when you know what you've done? Can you really touch her with my blood on your hands? Are you really that evil? Kylo said nothing, but you could feel the prick of rage as he swung out with his lightsaber towards her. You could see the red flash of the blade in her eyes as she flinched and looked away. You drop your hands, not letting the memory continue. There's more, Kylo says, but you can't. You literally can't. Mentally, you wouldn't have been able to keep up the connection. Watson was right. A part of you knew you shouldn't invoke his name, lest he meet the same fate as Sadie, but right now you couldn't help yourself. He was right. There was no ship. You never helped her escape. Your blood runs cold as you realize what that meant. You killed her. And all this time, I've just been sitting here, fucking you, telling you that You glance up at him, but you have to look away. You didn't just tell him that you loved him. You did love him. You loved the man that killed your sister. Your heart starts beating so fast you think it might burst out of your chest. You feel like a trapped animal. There is nowhere to go, nowhere to hide, and you'd gotten used to it now, but now you're suddenly wondering if you could use a chair or maybe even the forest to crack the glass window outside to escape that way when Kylo speaks, perhaps reading your thoughts. Stop. He grabs both of your hands in his, and even though you don't pull away, the gesture is revolting. You could still touch me after that? You ask quietly. After you killed her? I didn't kill her, Kylo snaps. You look up at him, and he looks almost embarrassed with himself, but he's no longer afraid. You didn't kill her. Your tone is flat. Then what the hell did I just see then? I lost control, he says firmly, but I didn't kill her. You need to see the rest. Sadie, you manage weakly, not looking at him. Are you really that evil? Why had she taunted him? Why did she goad him on? Had she stopped caring about her life that much? Had she become that jaded after Hux's torment? It didn't matter what she did, though. It didn't matter what she had said to him. This wasn't her fault. Kylo knew she was emotionally wrecked from everything she had been through, and yet he had still allowed himself to become incensed. I didn't kill her, Kylo repeats, pushing his lips against yours. You just bow your head and let your forehead sink into his shoulder as Kylo sighs with exasperation. Just look. I threatened her, yes, but that's all I did. I saw the look. Kylo is angry now, with you, and something about it brings you out of your stupor as you look up at him. You really didn't kill her? You ask hesitantly. Look, Kylo repeats, guiding your fingertips back to his temple. You pause for a moment before you reach forward and press your lips against his, trying to re-establish the connection. You feel the pad of his thumb run against your cheek as you slowly pull away, sucking on his bottom lip as you do so. I trust you, you tell him. Kylo was a great many evil things to a great many people, but he wasn't like that to you. And Sadie was an extension of you. He had lost his control, but there was no way that he had hurt her. You had faith in him. He wouldn't let you down. You close your eyes, and for a moment you don't see anything. You just see darkness around you. Suddenly the red flash of the lightsaber glows in front of your field of vision, and you can hear Sadie cry out in pain. The sound makes your blood run cold, and you're about to pull away again when Kylo puts his hands over yours, keeping you steady. You hear something else now, the dissonant clash of metal on metal, the sound of a chain link breaking. The glow of his lightsaber vanishes, and you can hear Kylo let out a stifled breath. Bastard, you hear Sadie hiss, and your heart immediately drops with relief. You... Suddenly the image of Sadie comes into view, holding the side of her neck. You almost killed me. I had to remove the collar, Kylo says simply, as he bends down to put his helmet back on. You could have broken the chain, Sadie replies, or there had to have been a key. I don't have time for this, Kylo responds. He walks over to her and grabs her by the chin with one gloved hand, forcing her head to the side. There is a large mark running down the side of her neck where her tender skin had been burned between the lightsaber and the metal as he burned the collar off, but she was alive. You got the distinct feeling that he knew you would not be happy to know he burned her, possibly scarred her forever, but it doesn't take him more than a moment for him to put his gloved hand to the side of her head and make her fall unconscious. He bends down and picks her up in both arms as he turns and carries her out of the room. That's all you need to see. You pull your hand away from him, lowering it slowly. Why didn't you just show me all that to begin with? You ask quietly. I didn't know how you would react, he responds, not meeting your eyes. Because you threatened to kill her, you ask? I mean, to be fair, I've threatened to kill you too, and I probably meant it more than you did. I meant it, Kylo says quietly, meeting your eyes. I wanted to kill her. It would have been so much easier to kill her, to just dispose of her body, and you would never have had to know. I would never have had to deal with all that shit from Hux. You can't help but snort as you look down. Kylo doesn't look like he's laughing, but you can't help it. Well, you burned her collar off with your lightsaber, so it's pretty obvious to figure out who did it. If you had just cut the chain or something. He shakes his head. He would have known it was me. Because of me, you reply solemnly, remembering what he had said to you before. Because of me. Because I'm a weakness. You're not a weakness, Kylo says so firmly, so suddenly, that it almost makes you fall off the bed even though you're not even sitting near the edge. You don't ask him what that means. You don't have to, because at this moment Kylo is pushing you down onto the bed, pushing himself on top of you, desperate to feel your lips against his. Okay, so this part gets a little not safe for work again, so I have the link in the description below. Kylo says, I would do anything for you. So then while they're cuddling, we resume with, so you'll do anything for me? You ask gently, running the pad of your index finger down across the bump of his lower lip. His eyes still shut, his head bobs forward in a series of quick little nods. So, does that mean you'll teach me how to do the force choke? He lets out a snort of laughter through his nose, and a grin spreads to your own lips as he leans forward to kiss you, his fingers running through your hair as he moves to cradle the back of your neck in his hands. That wasn't a no, you tell him as he pulls away. Stop talking, he whispers gently as he plants a firm kiss against your temple and snuggles himself in beside you. You cuddle yourself against him, burying your face in the crook between his neck and his shoulder as you close your eyes and think. He really did save Sadie, and you could see now why he didn't want you to have access to that memory. He could have killed her, easily. He wanted to kill her. He didn't want to save her. In fact, every emotion coursing through him told him to do the opposite. And yet he had. The scariest part of all was when Sadie asked him if he could fuck you every night with her blood on his hands. He could have. He really could. His hands were stained with blood, and yet he knew that you were counting on him, and he couldn't let you down. He couldn't disappoint you. And it was his feelings for you that led to him saving her life. It was by no means redemption. It wasn't the start of a new course. He did what he did because he was selfish, because he wanted to keep you, because he knew that he would lose you if he had killed her. But that didn't take away from the fact that he had still saved someone's life when he wanted to kill them. One good deed hardly erased a lifetime of sins, but it wasn't as though there was anyone out there actually weighing the scales. He had fought against his own urges and saved her life to show that he did care about you, to show that he could put you above his dark influences. You weren't sure what that meant for him. You could be sure that there was probably some good in him, some glimmer of light that he was trying to smother and snuff out with all the darkness. You didn't know, but then again, that wasn't your battle. It was not your job to save him from himself. It was not your job to clear away the darkness and bring him towards the light, especially not when you didn't know how much light you had within yourself. Now that you felt like you had a good sense of where you stood when you weren't being influenced by Kylo's temper, you didn't think that you could really kill someone, not even a stormtrooper. Even though they all wore those helmets, they were still people under there, people you might have interpreted for at one point or another, and you couldn't ever think of bringing yourself to end their life. It just wasn't something you had in you. So you would never be as dark as he was, nor would he ever be as light as you were. But maybe you could both exist in that fragile balance between light and dark. Maybe you could both be gray. Together.